Chapter 1, Uchiha Shintaro. Have you heard? Shimizu returned to the village with the illegitimate child he had with a foreign woman. He's really tainted the Uchiha bloodline. It seems to be just ahead. The two men were talking and looking ahead as they walked forward. In front of them, a black-haired man in civilian clothes was limping towards the Uchiha station. Next to him was a white-haired child. The two men, about 20 or 30 meters behind the older and younger person, muttered in low voices, an illegitimate child, he didn't even inherit the Uchiha's black hair. At this moment, the white-haired child in front silently turned around. The two men behind were startled. This child. So sharp. This white-haired child had striking white hair along with white eyelashes and eyebrows above his eyes. He also had a pair of bright blue eyes as bright as stars. The pair of big eyes stared at the two men, making it seem as if their thoughts were laid bare. The child turned back and continued holding his father's hand until they reached the Uchiha clan residence. Humph. It was just a coincidence. How could a little child find the two of us? Feeling humiliated, the two men defended themselves and left angrily. What's wrong? Shintaro. Uchiha Shimizu lowered his head and saw his son's earlier actions, and asked. The child named Uchiha Shintaro looked up, smiled, and shook his head. It's nothing, father. Shimizu nodded slightly. He knew that his son had been precocious since he was young, so he didn't ask too much. The two people, one big and one small, arrived at the clan leader's house under the strange gazes of many Uchiha clan members. After waiting at the door for a while, the door opened and they both entered and went into the large house. Patriarch. Shimizu held Shintaro's hand and bowed respectfully at 90 degrees. The young man in front of him sighed and helped the two of them up. Just call me Fugaku. After all, you are my senior. Uchiha Fugaku then invited the two to sit down and asked, how have you been these past few years? Shimizu coughed, and Shintaro stood up and patted his father's back, trying to ease his pain. When I left the Uchiha clan in Konoha, everyone was very unhappy. If my wife hadn't died of illness and I were not about to die myself, I wouldn't have come to beg you. Fugaku glanced at the white-haired boy behind Shimizu and had already guessed in his mind. It's because of the child. Shimizu pulled Shintaro to his side and said sincerely, when my family expelled me from the house, I left Konoha in anger. Because of my family, I wasn't classified as a traitor by the village, so I still feel guilty towards my family. I don't expect my family to forgive me, I just want them to accept this child. The child is innocent. Fugaku sighed, why bother? If you had followed the family's instructions to marry the elder's daughter, you wouldn't be in this situation now. Shimizu remained silent. Fugaku had no choice but to compromise and speak again. Well then, what is this child's name? Shintaro, answered the white-haired boy, his eyes very bright. Fugaku nodded. Shintaro, from today onwards, you are a member of the Uchiha clan. How old is he? 5 years old. Replied Shintaro. Fugaku looked at Shimizu. I will let the child enter the ninja school, don't worry. Thank you, Patriarch. Shimizu bowed in gratitude. I still kept your house for you, but it hasn't been cleaned for a long time. Thank you, I bid you farewell. Shimizu stood up with difficulty and left with his son's support. Fugaku looked at the two people walking away with a complicated expression. Shimizu and his son came to a somewhat secluded house. Although this place was secluded, it occupied a large area. Besides being a bit dilapidated, it was actually a good place to live. Next to it was the sound of a stream, and occasional birdsong could be heard around the forest. Shintaro helped his father onto the bed and let him rest for a while he started cleaning the house alone. At this moment, Shimizu suddenly started coughing violently, and then spat out a mouthful of blood. Shintaro immediately put down the broom in his hand, stepped forward, and took out a handkerchief to wipe the corners of Shimizu's mouth. After a while, Shimizu spoke weakly, with a faint smell of blood. Shintaro, you must become stronger. Only by becoming stronger can you take the initiative in your life in this world. The room on the left is my study. The cabinet at the lower left of the desk contains the gifts I left for you, which can help you become stronger. I am a quiet person and not good at dealing with others. There are only two people in this village whom I can call friends. One is Uchiha Fugaku, and the other is Yuhi Shinku. If you encounter problems, go to them. For my sake, they will help you. Shimizu said this for a long time, his tone becoming weaker and weaker, until his breath became fainter and fainter. That night, Uchiha Shimizu died at his home at the age of 25. His funeral was organized by Fugaku, but there were few guests. Besides Fugaku's wife, Uchiha Makoto, there was only one other man. Konoha Jonin Yuhi Shinku. He wore a green Konoha Jonin vest. He looked dusty and seemed to have just arrived from a mission. After a few words with Fugaku and his wife, Shinko came to Shimizu's gravestone. Shintaro knelt in front of the gravestone and paid silent respects, but did not cry or make a fuss, making him seem so mature and heart-wrenching. Boy! Shinku patted Shintaro's shoulder. Shintaro turned around and saluted, "Hello, Uncle Shinku." Shinku was slightly surprised. "How did you know I am Yuhi Shinku?" Shintaro explained, "Father said that he only had two friends in Konoha, Uncle Fugaku and Uncle Shinku." Shinku looked into Shintaro's blue eyes and said, "Don't worry, boy, I will treat you as my own." Shintaro bowed again. After the funeral, Shintaro returned home. The house had been cleaned inside and out, and the large house seemed very empty with only him living there. The smell of blood in the master bedroom had been washed away by water, and the last trace of his father's presence was gone. Shintaro felt an unprecedented loneliness. He knew that he was not from this world. A while later, he came to his father's study. The bookshelf was filled with various kinds of books. He went straight to the desk his father mentioned, opened the cabinet, and took out a wooden box. Opening the wooden box, there were several books and a piece of plain paper inside. Chakra Extraction Method, Fire Ninjutsu Collection, Water Ninjutsu Collection, Genjutsu Collection and Experience, Uchiha Clan Ninja Tool Control Techniques, and a chakra test paper. These were the gifts Shimizu left for his son. Chapter 2, Transfer Student. Have you heard? There's a transfer student coming to our class. In the Konoha Ninja School classroom, some well-informed children were loudly discussing the news. In fact, this so-called information was just something they happened to overhear while passing by the teacher's office. Obito, there's a transfer student. What kind of person is he? A cute, innocent girl with short brown hair posed this question with an expectant posture. She had 2 streaks of paint on her face, which made her very pretty. In fact, girls are just curious about strange people or things, but boys with budding hearts often find rivals in unexpected places. Humph, that person can't compare to my genius, Obito. Rin, just wait until I become Hokage. The girl named Rin was taken aback for a moment, then she smiled brightly. Yeah, I'll be waiting. The girl would always take the childish words of that boy seriously. Perhaps this was one of the reasons why she held such an important place in his heart. Not far from there, a masked boy with dead fish eyes and white hair, Hatake Kakashi, crossed his arms over his chest. He looked towards the door, fully aware of the commotion. I can hear your voices downstairs, that's really inappropriate. Hiroshi Yamashita, a teacher known for his strictness, shouted loudly. The whole place fell silent, but there was still a boy quietly chatting with the girl next to him. The boy was wearing a mesh shirt and a sleeveless jacket. His skin was slightly browner than his peers. But the girl's mind had already wandered far away. He must be the transfer student my father mentioned. The girl had slightly curly black hair, large eyes, and dazzling red pupils like rubies. These 2 young girls were Sarutobi Asuma and Yuhi Kurenai. Quiet. Hiroshi reminded them again, and Asuma quieted down. He looked at Asuma helplessly and thought, after all, he is the son of the Hokage-sama, so let's give him some face. Asuma's academic performance was considered excellent in the class, but his temperament was a bit childish, or rather, a bit rebellious, and he became a thorn in the class. This was the conclusion Hiroshi had reached after more than 20 years of teaching. Hiroshi looked around. Wherever he looked, no one dared to speak, so he nodded in satisfaction. After all, they are in the advanced class and still have potential. If nothing goes wrong, they will become the pillars of Konoha in the future. He had high hopes for this class. Our class has welcomed a new classmate. Now let the new classmate introduce himself. After Hiroshi finished speaking, he gestured for Shintaro to come to the podium, while he stepped aside. As Shintaro walked to the podium, the students present began to whisper to each other again, especially the girls. Shintaro's outstanding appearance was very captivating to the girls. Shintaro glanced at the audience, his eyes as bright as stars, causing some girls to scream. "My name is Uchiha Shintaro," Shintaro said calmly. "Uchiha? Obito, aren't all Uchiha supposed to have black hair? Compared to an Uchiha, he looks more like Kakashi." Noara Rin patted Obito and asked softly. Obito blushed at first, then reacted and replied, "Oh. I heard, that bastard. Anyway, he's not a pure-blooded Uchiha." He looked at the white-haired boy on the stage again and couldn't help but mutter, "Ha, another white-haired guy." Kakashi, who was being attacked, looked at Obito with some displeasure, then turned his attention to Shintaro. Uchiha. He felt a silent desire to compete in his heart, and he sensed a threat to his genius status from Shintaro. His name is Shintaro. Kurenai confirmed that the boy in front of her was Shintaro, whom her father had told her to treat as a relative. Next to her, Asuma leaned back somewhat sadly. "Uchiha or not, the Sarutobi clan is the strongest in Konoha." Asuma's voice was neither soft nor loud, but it reached Shintaro's ears. Shintaro glanced at him, his eyes still calm. Asuma was taken aback by the sharpness of the other party. After all, he didn't speak loudly, and the class couldn't be said to be silent now. However, at this moment, Hiroshi spoke up, breaking the awkward situation. "In addition to your name, you also need to introduce your hobbies and dreams so your classmates can understand you better." Shintaro then continued, "I like." He originally planned to face it, but at this moment, some parts of his memory suddenly surfaced in his mind. Shintaro knew that he didn't belong to this world, but he only knew a little about his past life. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it amnesia. And now, because of touching on topics like personal preferences, some memories emerged. "I like eating candy and barbecue, fighting, hunting, listening to the shamisen, and I hate drinking." As soon as Shintaro finished speaking, some of the audience burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha ha, his hobbies are so old-fashioned, even listening to the shamisen, my grandma doesn't even listen to it. Ha 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 ha." The one laughing the loudest was Obito. Hearing Shintaro's old-fashioned hobbies, he couldn't help himself. Some boys also laughed. Asuma mocked Shintaro for pretending to be an adult. "Ha, he still likes fighting and hates drinking. You're still a kid. Why are you pretending?" Kurenai heard the sarcastic remarks around her, but she didn't agree with them because she saw from Shintaro's eyes that he didn't seem to be lying. However, the preferences he mentioned were indeed not like what a child would say, which made Kurenai feel very conflicted, thus arousing strong curiosity. Asuma turned to Kurenai and said, "Kurenai, look at him, he still hates drinking." The laws of Konoha village state that minors are prohibited from drinking. It's too much to pretend to be an adult. Kurenai nodded without knowing why, but in fact, she wasn't listening to what Asuma said at all. Her red eyes were staring at Shintaro on the stage. Asuma felt his cheeks and ears warm, perhaps blushing, and that embarrassing feeling made him very unhappy. This time, Shintaro on the stage spoke again. "Dream, it's not a dream but a goal. My goal is to become stronger until I am strong enough to take the initiative in life." This mature statement made some girls scream uncontrollably. Mature, solitary, and handsome men were always popular among schoolgirls. However, there were also those who pondered Shintaro's words. Kakashi murmured the word initiative while thinking. And Kurenai, knowing Shintaro's family background, felt even more sympathetic. A young boy whose parents had died and lived alone in the Uchiha house was not someone passive. Chapter 3, Six Eyes. Hiroshi was also taken aback by the surprising maturity of the transfer student, but he was well informed and had seen all kinds of students before, so he stepped onto the podium. You can take the empty seat. He pointed to the empty seat in the classroom. The ninja school classroom was equipped with desks and chairs with 3 seats each, and the so-called empty seat was the innermost seat next to Asuma and Kurenai, located on the far right of the second row near the window. Please make way. Asuma didn't respond, silently standing up and moving aside from his position. Kurenai smiled and greeted. Hello, I'm Yuhi Kurenai. Please take care of me in the future. Shintaro showed a clear expression. After all, Yuhi Kurenai and Yuhi Shinku were almost identical father and daughter. Thank you. Shintaro bowed slightly, genuinely expressing his gratitude to the father and daughter. However, Kurenai blushed because of this serious attitude and waved her hand, saying, No need to be so polite, my father asked me to look after you. Shintaro nodded and sat down. When Asuma heard Kurenai's words, he couldn't help but feel jealous. Hiroshi handed Shintaro the textbook, then returned to the podium to start teaching. Today in our history class, we'll talk about the First Ninja World War. War, it's inevitable in every world. Shintaro said emotionally, opening the book and reading it carefully. Huh? What did you say? Kurenai asked curiously. Shintaro shook his head and said, Nothing. You opened the wrong page. This is the history of Konoha's founding. Kurenai looked at the textbook in front of Shintaro and said. Shintaro saw the Senju and Uchiha family emblems in the textbook and was momentarily lost in thought. Kurenai reached out and helped him turn to the correct page. Shintaro thanked her and took a piece of paper from the book, flipping through it. This harmonious and friendly scene made Asuma clench his fists, touching his head and feeling discomfort, as if wearing something. The class passed quickly, and Shintaro listened attentively. After all, this was the first time he had received systematic knowledge education in this world, so he was still flipping through the book after class ended. His blue eyes quickly scanned the book. History, code texts, chakra extraction, theoretical ninjutsu knowledge, all of it was absorbed into Shintaro's brain like water into a sponge. With his intelligence, it was easy to understand these new things. He had finished reading more than half the book and certainly didn't intend to let it go after class ended. The classroom was very noisy after class, and almost everyone gathered in pairs or threes to chat and play. After all, they were in their first year at ninja school. These boys and girls were half-grown children. Kurenai left her seat to chat with her female friend, Mitarashi Anko. Anko nudged Kurenai with her elbow. Hee, your new deskmate is very handsome, much more handsome than Asuma, and he suits you better. Anko said this with a knowing smile that only close friends would understand, raising her eyebrows, making Kurenai immediately understand what she meant. What are you talking about? Kurenai patted her shoulder shyly, but Anko kept gossiping. Asuma looked at Shintaro sitting obediently at his desk and mocked him as a nerd. The novelty of being a transfer student wasn't comparable to the fun after class ended, so no one bothered him. Shintaro just read quietly for a few minutes. The students in the class left one by one. The next class was combat training, so it had to be held outdoors. Shintaro then put down his textbook, left his seat, and followed the crowd to the training ground. Hiroshi was still the teacher for this class and was already waiting on the field. It's time for class. You're walking too slowly. He was still very strict, so the students hurriedly gathered. When everyone arrived, Hiroshi took out his list and announced, Today's combat training continues. We'll start with Gekko Hei 8. You can choose your opponent. The winner can continue to choose their opponent. Due to the setting, Gekko Hei 8 and Mitarashi Anko are currently only 2 years old, but they are the same age as Kakashi in the original memory, so I'm ignoring the age setting bug here. I choose Uchiha Shintaro. Gecko Hay-8, a sickly looking boy with dark circles under his eyes, stepped forward and announced his chosen opponent. The atmosphere on the field instantly became lively. Hey, I think the transfer student doesn't know how to fight. Even though Hay-8 always coughs, he's still very strong. Right, the transfer student might be in danger. Shintaro's ears twitched slightly, gathering information about his opponent. It seemed the opponent was considered a strong player in the class. Kurenai couldn't help but worry about Shintaro, her eyes fixed on his back as he walked to the stage. Anko beside her looked like she had been knocked down, while Asumo looked sullen. Shintaro and Hay-8 stood in the middle of the open space in front of everyone. The open space was about 20 meters long and wide, which was more than enough for children to fight. Shintaro clenched his fists, thinking about how to defeat the boy in front of him. You haven't refined chakra, have you? To be fair, I won't use chakra. Hay-8 took the initiative to limit himself. Shintaro refused. It's unfair to you if you don't use chakra. Shintaro's words were understood by Hay-8 as I don't need chakra to beat you. So Hay-8 didn't hesitate anymore and planned to use his original skills to face the transfer student in front of him. Although in every aspect, he should be stronger than the boy in front of him who didn't even have chakra, Hay-8 felt like he was facing a formidable enemy. The white-haired, blue-eyed boy in front of him always gave an inexplicable sense of oppression. Being able to use chakra actually made Hay-8 feel relieved. Shintaro touched the area around his eyes, and his blue eyes were still clearly visible. All sorts of details from all directions were visible to his eyes. 6 eyes. Shintaro remembered his eyes being called 6 eyes. It seemed these eyes could give him keen insight. These eyes, coupled with the remaining combat experience in his subconscious and the combat awareness in his bones, became the confidence that he, a new student who had only been exposed to chakra for less than 2 days, dared to fight against the strong in the class. Shintaro raised his fists one by one and placed them in front of his forehead and chest. He spread his legs and took a horse stance, staying in the same position to face all changes. However, Hiroshi interrupted his readiness to fight. Shintaro, you need to form the friendship symbol first. Hay-8 raised his right hand, extending his index and middle fingers together, and brought his other fingers together. This was the friendship symbol. Shintaro followed suit and placed his hands to form the friendship symbol.